this year. I have 10 minutes, and in 10 minutes, I want to try to give everybody a working formula for love. This comes after, I think this is probably 20 years in the making. I've shared it with a lot of close friends, and we've all been working it, I'd say, fairly intensely for the last while, and we've been having some pretty amazing results in our lives. So really what I'm going to try to give you today is kind of that 40,000-foot view with a few sort of sub-mechanisms that can help you along, but certainly, you know, this is a 10-year exploration, I think, to really fully go through all the nuances. So really what I have is I have a concept and then a mechanism that the concept works in. You know, when we talked earlier about science, I believe that everything is reducible, even love, and so here's my formula for it. So the very first part of it is the concept of my love for you only exists in your experience of it. And this is a harsh rule, and I have not found an exception to it yet. Okay? There are two major ways that I've found that we confuse this or get it wrong. The first is I do things for you that are loving, like say for my family, I provide for them, I do stuff, right? And I think, well, I love them. If they don't experience what I'm doing for them as love, according to my rule, love has not occurred. It's number one. The tougher one is if I feel the feeling of I love you, that feeling feels great. And it's a precursor, and I think maybe even a necessary part of love, but it is not love. Full stop. Still have not found an exception to that rule either. And probably in society I would find that that's the number one confusion that people have. I think the extreme example of that is a stalker who obviously feels unbounded love for the target of their affection, and certainly how it's received on the other end is quite the opposite of love. So I start with this concept, and the concept itself, when you really look at it, can be extremely confronting and extremely challenging, because what it leads to is an inventory, and it's an action inventory. So I've made a list of people in my life that I love, and I've started looking at, well, how much of that do they actually experience? And when I've done it, and when my friends have done this, quite often there's a gap. And the gap sometimes is quite significant. You know, I see people all the time say, I love X. And then I look at how they treat X on a day-to-day basis, and I watch them. And I gotta tell you, sometimes there's not a lot of love happening. So that one can be confronting, and that can be hard. So we have that concept, and that concept, I think, feeds into the mechanism. So the mechanism is fairly simple. It's a flywheel. A flywheel is an engineering thing, and really what it is this big wheel that's really heavy. It sort of has these weights inside of it, so it's very hard to turn it the first time. And then, but once you start turning it, it starts getting momentum, and then it's very easy to keep it going, to keep it going at a high rate. So it's pretty simple to say, well, you know, if I send love to you, and you receive it, and then you send it back to me, that's the flywheel, right? It seems pretty obvious. I think most people get that. Now, the challenge with that is it goes wrong in a lot of ways. And in every way that it goes wrong, the flywheel stays at the slower speeds where it's really hard to turn, or maybe it even doesn't turn at all, right? So I've found that there are two major ways in which the flywheel can get broken, I guess, which is I'll send something loving, a transmission, over to you. In this case, you're actually receiving it as love. So you receive it as love, and then I get one of two not good responses. The first, which is quite painful, is some form of indifference. I've done something amazing for you, you felt amazing, and I don't get a thank you, I don't get anything back. Right? The The second, which is even worse, and I see this too, is you get something negative back. I've sent something positive out to you, and you're just, it's like, you get some kind of negative energy back. So talk about, like, you're not even in the realm of this flywheel even starting to turn, right? And so I have a basic mechanism for, I guess, resolving this. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance. The first is, you got to pull back, I think, a bit and look at what is your capacity for love? What are your skills? Because I think there actually are skills. And how does that other person need to receive it, right? So that's sort of the first part of it. Just because I'm doing something loving for you, maybe that's not the thing that you need, right? And so there's got to be a bit of a negotiation and a discovery there. Once we figure that out, let's say that now I'm sending it out and now it's not coming back, or it's coming back in a negative fashion. What I find is my first reaction is to get really pissed off, really angry, and the lizard part of my brain wants to attack you and make you sorry for ignoring me or whatever you did, right? That's my normal reaction. And so the framework that I've come up with, and I have actually been doing this, and it's been challenging, trust me, is to take that anger, that spike in emotion, and deal with that on my own. So I'm not allowed to interact with the other person until I've calmed down my amygdala and I'm back to normal. Right? So I calm that down. Then I go back to them, and the energy that I've thought of is very much, I use the archetype of Nelson Mandela, a man who certainly had every reason to be extremely pissed off and come out of that jail like guns a-blazing, these American kind of movies. He's going to get revenge on those who wronged him, right? That's that sort of animal brain. But really what he had was a real quiet power. And quiet power, I think, is the most powerful energy. I actually think it's far more powerful than anger. So I come back in a mindset of quiet power and lay out three things for the person. The first is I talk not about them, but about their actions. I did this for you, and then you did this back. And then I talk about how it made me feel. But remember, I'm calm while I'm doing this. This hurt me, and here's why it hurt me, etc., etc. Right? And then the last part, which is almost harder than the first two, is to set the standards and to clearly lay out what my standards are, which sometimes does lead to a bit of a negotiation with the other person. So when I do this for you, I need at least this if we're going to keep doing that. Otherwise, it's going to have to end. Something like that, right? Where you really lay down and make clear how your world needs to work. So, that's basically it. Okay, the first part, just to go over it again, right? My love for you only exists in your experience of it. Only. If I want more love in my life, I got to get more flywheels going and get them going quicker and quicker. In order to do that, I need to take an inventory of how my love is actually landing with the other person. And if there's any breaks in that, it's my responsibility to fix that, only me. So if that person is not able, or there's any problems on that side of the transmission, that's where I use the other framework, right? And really lay out the behavior that doesn't work, lay out how it makes me feel, and where I want to go from here.